because that's your personal drive. That's your intrinsic drive. You want to create goosebumps for people. That's going to make you get up in the morning, you know. And I did that a bunch of times. And so my word of inspiration would be just allow yourself to forget about titles, forget about salary benches, forget about anything. Just think about what would you do if you are bored, and what do you want to create?
Hello and welcome. Today I'm delighted to have Francesco join me from Kenjo. So Francesco, thank you so much for joining me today. Please tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Nice to meet you, Scott. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm Francesco Carbone, actually. I'm born and raised in Germany. Got my beautiful name from my father from Napoli, and I'm working with Kenjo at the moment, the COO. That doesn't really say much, but what I'm in charge of is people and product, and also parts of where we're headed with our strategy, basically. And yeah, I'm delighted to meet you today to speak about purpose, one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, what I'm trying to cover on this series is really to understand interesting technology that is really helping to move us closer towards the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. But also understand, importantly, the people behind that. What motivates the people, why they do what they do, and how they move from one day to another. And yeah, I think a big reason for that is that we are in a very weird time of our lives. Hopefully it's a blip in our 80-year lifespan. But there's a lot of, I think we all need some interesting viewpoints and different viewpoints, and understanding what drives people. So I'd really like to ask you the question, what drives you? Why do you do what you do?
Yeah, so I always say there are two stories. There's a very personal story, and let's say a rational story. Maybe the more relatable one is the personal. It's basically so I'm working since 15 years. That's a long time for me. It's a long time, and half of it I really didn't like working. That's just how easy and simple that is. That's where my energy comes from. That's why I want to change things, is because I know exactly how it feels to be in a job where you just don't want to get out of bed in the morning. It's like it takes all your energy just to do the first step and go out. Or you have these moments like, why am I even doing this? I'm not really leaving any positive mark here. And I was working in essentially the first half of my life in jobs like that. And I was crazy enough to think I can change that. Yeah. So I thought this must be better. Yeah. So I was on a sabbatical in the U.S. for half a year. I sold my car. I canceled my apartment. I stopped everything. Quit my job, of course, and took the little bit of money that I earned back then, and just disappeared. And yeah, in the West Coast, San Francisco, LA, San Diego, but also Seattle, Portland, I met people that told me about different ways of working, and more freedom-based, and focused on bringing people in their flow and so on. I was like, wow, this is new. I've never heard about anything like this, I thought I was paid for showing up, that's what I've been taught so far. And I said, well, maybe this can work in Germany too, right? So I went back and started to look for jobs that would, build this, and eventually realized that there's almost nothing. Like just a couple of years ago, so like 6-7 years ago, Germany was not really investing in new ways of working so much. It's quite a new topic actually still, and now everyone knows it, everyone talks about it. Anyways, what I found was a position as a feel-good manager in a German dating app called Lavu. It's like similar to Tinder probably, and they were heavily invested into employer branding and those topics, and I was mainly in charge of that, and that was my foot in the door in this topic basically. And since then, I have worked in every year in a new company, or consulted, or did many different things to arrive where I am right now, and with massive learning curves in the last 6-7 years, and now arrived at Kenjo to reach as many people as possible.
Excellent. I'm lucky enough to have spent a lot of time in many of those places you mentioned as well, California, Seattle, with my roles. It was a bit of a culture shock when I went there for the first time. What was the thing that stood out most for you in the working world when you went there?
Well, the amount of ownership that employees get to determine how they are successful, to how they create value, and the room for creativity that was given, and just to the rethinking this topic was just fascinating for me. And it felt so right. So do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting. And you came back, you had these ideas. What was it? How did you take all of that input that you'd gathered from your sabbatical and formulate it into, well, you know what I should be doing with my life? I should be doing this. How did that process work for you?
Yeah, I'm being very frank here. I had no idea. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how it would work. That's why I said I'm gonna search for a job where I learn this. Mm-hmm. You know, where I bring it was like a mix where I learn how to do this, and eventually every year I did something different. Yeah, so in the beginning it was very incentivation focused. You know, I think the right word is incentivization, right? Yeah. Okay. So we would throw parties all the time. We created furniture everywhere, for the office. We had a foosball table, and it was all around fun, hedonistic stuff, you know. And after a year, I realized, okay, that might not be it, you know. that it can't be it. And because we got into a very, very exciting times where we got raided by the military police inside the office, and so we had a big crisis, and it was very exciting, amazing time. So I realized quickly, okay, maybe just incentivizing employees all the time with bonus, with money, with food, with party, with alcohol, this is not sustainable. So I moved on and started to apply for a research fund from for the Founders Center of Germany. So I got a year that I could research the topic. So, and did pro bono consulting for some NGOs and other startups, and started to measure culture. I was like, okay, how do employees perceive actually what's going on? And created my own engagement survey with categories and everything with a partner. And I said, okay, again, I need to learn more. Where do I go? And then I went into an international environment with an innovation hub, and did a personality development with employees from a program that is called Potential Life from Tal Ben-Shahar. It's a positive psychologist professor, I think, in Harvard. He created a program. I ran it for Tel Aviv and Berlin, but we also had offices in Palo Alto and in London and everywhere, Warsaw, and so did that for a year, and then moved on again, and I had my first leadership position as a people lead to grow a team from 30 to 60 employees, and again new challenges, new environment. So it was like an entire learning path since I'm arrived in Berlin since 6 years ago. Yeah, and now Kenjo.
Yeah, so I'd love, I mean, if we have another conversation later on, I'd love to delve into the military police story. That sounds like a great one. Let's leave that out of this interview. But tell me, so I guess the workplace has changed beyond recognition in the last 12 months, a little bit longer for nearly all of us, I think. I'm one of those where it hasn't changed so much because I've worked from home basically nearly all my life. I've seen firsthand when I was at Vodafone at the turn of the century, that kind of incentivization. You know, we had table tennis tables, bean bags, we had duvet days where we could just phone in and say, yeah, I'm not coming in today. And it kind of worked, but then it ran dry. And then there was always something else you needed. And I think there's, from what I understand, and maybe you can talk more about this, it's the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and how you bring that into your organization. So, yeah, am I onto something there? Is that something that you've changed your mindset about as you go through this journey you just talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. So what it for me looked like is both is interesting. Yeah, so both is relevant. I think we can apply it to our own lives, right? If we would always do just good decisions where we're intrinsically motivated by, then that sounds like a boring life, right? So we need also this other side. It's like it's yin and yang somehow. But yeah, the basis is the intrinsic motivation, which can be supplied by purpose, you know, by supplying employees with something bigger than themselves, you know, and making them part of a journey, not just using them as a resource. Yeah, Kenjo's slogan is humans more than resources. Yeah. And this is definitely one of the bigger learnings. You need to listen more to their to employees' needs, and be brave enough to do something about it, because sometimes it's complicated, and more complicated than throwing a party on Thursday night.
Yeah, true. So getting to that point, how do you go about understanding the things that are motivating your staff, your teams, and how are you applying technology to get to that point and improve that?
It's a very, very simple, there's a very simple way to go about it. You know? So again, I think one of the biggest issues is that companies right now, they still perceive culture as very difficult. It's very complex. It's very, how do I go about it? But the starting point is actually quite easy. And what we supply with Kenjo, for example, is an optimized employee engagement survey. So what it does is it gives you a fair overview of how your employee perceives what you are doing. And because what I saw does not work very well is just to take a blueprint from, let's say, Google, Netflix, or, you know, how to run a company, how to be an employer, and then just use it for yourself, because in this regard, culture is very complex. It matters in what city you are, in what business you are, what leaders you have, what resources you have, what brand perception you have. Everything matters. But only with something like an employee engagement survey, you can get a fair overview how your employees right now are perceiving what you're doing or not doing. Yeah. So to make it more tangible, there will be categories like communication with subcategories, or leadership or feedback, or all those important topics, and it will give you a score from a scale to 0 to 10, 10 being the highest. And then you can just have a look, how how am I doing? And there's some benchmarks in the around where you can also have a look how you're competing more or less against other companies, and then slowly iterate your offer if you want to.
So a question on that then is, why bother? I'm being deliberately provocative there, and I'm going to pull up a favorite piece of paper of mine now, and it's this one, the United Nations SDGs. A lot of what I'm doing is focusing on how we're getting closer to these. Why does improving this for employees, improving the workplace, help? Why does it matter?
Yeah. So again, there's a purpose-driven answer and there's a business-driven answer.
Let's hit both.
Yeah. So for every, let's say, CEO who doesn't understand that topic or didn't really look it up so much yet, well, everyone will be more perform better. If you have everything in place that the employee needs to be successful, then the company will be successful. Like you said initially, only people create values, nobody else, right? So that's something that we need to think about. If we support the employee, he will support back, and that's from the business side. And from a purpose-driven side, people work half of their lives, right? More than half of their lives, and while they are awake, I think usually 9 to 10 hours per day, maybe 8 sometimes. And we really want to give them a good time, no? Time is counted. I think the awareness about this is getting bigger and bigger. That we should make this count, this one life that we have, probably. Yeah, I'm not sure. Different religion, different views, but no, that's my my guess that we have one life, and so if we improve the time that they're there, we instill also behavior, and that they will carry on to their families, to their friends, to their own lives, and it's great to have a positive impact in that. That's my motivation.
Yeah, I think from my own personal experience, when I reflect on the different roles and positions I've had, it's quite clear to see the impact on the family when I'm working in a role I'm not enjoying, compared to the impact I have on my family and the kind of extended people around me when I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So yeah, I appreciate that completely. Good. So I mean, that's fascinating. I think the other thing I wanted to touch on is from a human point of view, over the last couple of over the last year, things have changed dramatically. So from the work that you're doing and the clients you're working with, obviously COVID, working from home is the big change, but how have they adapted to that? What kind of best practices have you seen being put into place to help manage that transition and support people through that time?
Yeah, so we were lucky enough that when COVID hit last year, I think in Germany it was around March, that we just had a very, very short time to think about how to secure our own business. I think it was a week, literally a week. And then we immediately thought about how can we help? What can we do to, make this not a good experience? It's not a good experience to go to a pandemic, but to make this work. And we immediately started to produce little things to help companies, and it started with best one-on-one meeting templates, share content every single day, free content, how to work remote, the ultimate remote work guide, things like that. All of those things, shout outs, so positive feedback in the app. We created a shout outs feature just because of COVID, a news feed, for, hey, now you can go to the office now, not, and so on. So to have a place where people can check what's new, what's going on, and also a performance suite, things like that. So it was constantly in our minds, what can we do to help, and anything that connects people during that time is helpful. We're now speaking over Zoom. I think they're one of the biggest winner, but also supporter in these times.
Yeah, I've heard other big winners are networking companies. Surprisingly. Yeah. How do you see the workplace changing over the next 12 months? And what is it that you're doing at Kenjo to help with those transformations?
So one of our focus topics is to give more participation to the employee, because what we see in the market is that most of the existing solutions, our competitors, they still have built the software after old rules, let's say. Yeah, so a very centralized approach. The buyer persona, who's the HR admin, can do everything, and nobody else can do anything. So, and we have a very specific angle. We say, yes, of course, we need to also help the HR admin to save a lot of time, but she can truly save time only when everyone else is working with them, which is the employee, the manager, the recruiter, the tax advisor, the C-level, and all of them. And we wanna give them more participation of this journey. We call it dual focus, even though it's a lot of different personas, but that's our specific angle. Yeah.
So there's also, in many of the conversations I've had recently, the topic of the role of the employer in the employee's well-being now that they're not in the office. So there's been, obviously, when you work in an office, the environment is very well controlled. You've got your table set up nicely, your desk set up nicely, you've got the air conditioning on, the heating, the light, noise, all of that. Now we're all working from home in these little offices, maybe in the corner of a room, or a small room that gets full up with carbon dioxide very quickly when you talk a lot. How do you see the role of an employer kind of evolving in that respect, in the well-being and kind of safety working home?
Yeah, fantastic question. In my opinion, HR department employer should be someone who distributes knowledge, framework, everything an employee needs to be successful. That can be the hardware sent to the employee's home. That can be guidelines. That can be frequent check-ins, trainings, many different things. Software, of course, for sure. That's the number one thing, I would say. Not telling them what to do. For sure, that not, but giving them all the possibilities they need to make good decisions for themselves.
Because I guess some of the companies I've worked for, where nearly all of us work from home was that culture. It was set in the culture. There were other companies where if you were working from home, there was also a little bit of suspicion about what you were doing, and that was culture as well. So do you see there's a role in what you're doing to help kind of smooth some of that out and apply and help convey some learnings from companies that have done it well based on the culture scores and the feedback scores you see to companies that may be struggling at this time?
Yeah, so for sure, companies that still are, let's say, reluctant to go away from time, from the sequence, from time against money, in this exchange. That's going to be difficult because you can't really track the employee's time. I mean, of course, we could design a software that would track an employee's or an individual's engagement in the notebook or something. Just by saying it sounds incredibly creepy, right? So no, I don't think that's the right way. We need to have the transition to goals, setting goals, and go more to a transition engagement versus purpose versus being part of something bigger. That's just companies that don't have the framework, don't know how to do it. That can be quite complex. I mean, to set up everything at once, performance, feedback, goals, culture, values, and all that kind of stuff, that would be impossible, right? It would be way too overwhelming. It needs time, it needs education, it needs the right software again, it needs the right software. It needs the right leadership. It needs a lot of things to actually be successful. And yeah, and the companies that succeed in this area are the ones that put the right time and resources into it, of course.
So if somebody was looking to you for inspiration, I mean, your story is very interesting, how you went on this sabbatical and you came back with these wonderful ideas, and you went about researching how to bring them into the work around you. If somebody's looking to you for inspiration, what advice would you give them? Where would you send them to go and look or work, or who to speak to?
Yeah, I do a little exercise with people who ask me for inspiration. I had it actually a couple of times that people approached me and said, Francesco, you love your job. I also want to love my job. How do I do this? It's true. It's actually reality. And I invite them to think about a world where you don't need to work. Doesn't matter what you're doing. You get money from the government, status, all that kind of stuff doesn't play a role. And it's quite a likely scenario, right? If you think about it, AI, robotics, and so on. At some point, not every human being in the world doesn't need to work anymore. So think about this, and think about how would you spend your day? What would you do? What would you do in the morning? Yeah, okay, maybe eat something, breakfast, maybe do some sports, right? What else? Then at some point you get boring. You get bored. Not boring. You get bored. And
probably would get boring if that's all you did as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So you get bored. What do you do? When is the moment when you include people into something that you do, that you organize, maybe? Yeah. And so by doing that, sometimes people say, I would like to paint with other people, like paint pictures. And then I ask them, what feeling do you want your friends or the people that you include to have while doing this? And then the craziest answers come. My favorite was, not going to reveal who that was, but
okay, I'll turn the camera off when you can.
It's I want to create goosebumps for people. I said, well, that's lovely, And this person constantly talked constantly talked about, like, yeah, I want to work in this area, renewable energy, with this kind of title, and in this kind of city, and with this kind of people. So it was very tangible. Now this person had just this one thing: I want to create goosebumps. And I said, now you have a decision maker if you take a job or not.
Yeah, very good.
Because that's your personal drive. That's your intrinsic drive. You want to create goosebumps for people. That's going to make you get up in the morning, And I did that a bunch of times. And so my word of inspiration would be, just allow yourself to forget about titles, forget about salary benches, forget about anything. Just think about what would you do if you are bored, and what do you want to create? Allow yourself to be bored.
Yeah, I call that a holiday. The opportunity to be bored is my idea of a holiday. Not that I will actually ever get bored. I'm too busy for that. But no, I like that. Thank you very much for sharing. So I guess lastly then, if people want to get in contact with you or want to find out more about what Kenjo does, what's the best way for them to learn more?
Well, visit our website or approach me on LinkedIn. That's all good.
Brilliant. I'll put those links. I'll put your LinkedIn profile and the website down here. So by the time you're watching it, it should be here now. And then that's great. And I think that's the last question I always ask my guests is there anything we've covered now, anything we haven't covered now that you would like to share with us? It's okay to say no, but if there is something, please let me know.
Maybe one more little story that I would like to share, because it is quite difficult to be an idealist nowadays, since capitalism is still very strong, and the behavioral traits in the management suite and so on, it's tough to deal with them, because they're founded in the last couple decades or century even. And I spoke to someone very inspirational about this, with much more experience than me, as an old man in Italy on a mountain, and we had a dinner and way too much wine. And he was a journalist. He used to be a journalist, and he was speaking to, and I'm not joking, he spoke to the Dalai Lama. He sat on the lap of Picasso and met Picasso. He met some of the most inspiring people, also the Pope and many more people. And he was bitter, and I will never forget that. He was very bitter. He was not happy to see me being so idealistic about changing the workplace, and it took me 3 bottles of wine to get a recommendation out of him, because I said you must have some sort of advice for me to stay idealistic, because I'm not yet ready to give it up, and the one thing he said, and I think wisdom should be always shared, and it's from him, it's not from me, of course. He said, be an island. What he meant by that is stay autonomous. If you need to feel you need to change something, change it. And don't put yourself in a situation where you're forced by outer parties to go against your values and your purpose.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for passing on those words of wisdom. Very much appreciate that. At some point, I'll find out what wine you were drinking. It's a hobby of mine. And yes, thank you very much for your time today, Francesco. And for all of those who are watching, if you like this, please do click like, do subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you want to get hold of Francesco and find out what Kenjo are doing, please click the links below. With that, thank you very much again.
Yeah, thank you also.